Auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. My dear students, yesterday I touched in the topic of your syllabus of your book, English book, 11th English book, a handful of dates. And also yesterday I provided you a brief introduction about the writer and introduction about the topic. Now proceeding forward, the writer in pre-reading section asked us two questions. The question number first is that who are your role models? हर एक की जिंदगी में कोई ना कोई रोल मॉडल होता है, चाहे वो टीचर्स हो, चाहे वो हमारे पेरेंट्स हो, चाहे वो फिल्म स्टार हो, या हमारे फ्रेंड सर्कल में कोई या कोई थर्ड पर्सन जो हमारी सोर्स ऑफ इंस्पायरेशन बन जाता है. तो एज फॉर मुस्लिम्स आर कंसर्न, हमारा रोल मॉडल है हमारे प्रॉफिट मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम. तो उसके बाद हमारे रोल मॉडल्स टीचर्स कोई होता है, किसी को पेरेंट्स होते हैं, किसी के ब्रदर सिस्टर होते हैं, या कोई थर्ड पर्सन. तो अगर है जिंदगी में कोई रोल मॉडल तो उसमें कौन कौन सी क्वालिटीज आपको चाहिए? What qualities would you look for in a role model? पर्सनालिटी के हिसाब से, इंटीग्रिटी के हिसाब से, ऑनेस्टी के हिसाब से, कैरेक्टर के हिसाब से, डेडिकेशन के हिसाब से, या ऑनेस्टी के हिसाब से. तो what quality should one's role model possess? Now moving forward, बेटा आज मैं आपको इस टॉपिक के दो पैरा, आई विल ट्राई टू एक्सप्लेन द फर्स्ट टू पैराज इन ए वेरी सिंपल लैंग्वेज सो दैट यू पीपल विल गेट इट इजी टू अंडरस्टैंड. यस्टरडे कल ही मैंने आपको थोड़ा इंट्रोडक्शन में बताया था कि दिस इज ए वेरी गुड स्टोरी विथ ए लॉट ऑफ ह्यूमन interests. The protagonist, the main character, is a small boy around whom the whole story revolves around. Because he loves, the little boy loves and admires his grandfather, and he desired to grow into like a man like his grandfather. But when he comes to know about the greed of his grandfather and lust for property about the grandfather, the boy begins to hate his grandfather. Because his grandfather was so greedy, so mean, he was exploiting the poor people for his personal benefits. Beta, the narrator used to go out with his grandfather. ये स्मॉल चाइल्ड जो है ये अपनी कहानी हमें सुना रहा है कि कैसे मैं अपने दादों को एज ए रोल मॉडल समझता था, कैसे मैं बड़ा होकर चाहता था कि मैं ऐसे बनूं, अपने दादा जैसा लंबा, दाढ़ी सफेद, एक अच्छा इंसान. लेकिन जब उसको धीरे धीरे पता चलता है अबाउट द क्वालिटीज, अबाउट द नेचर ऑफ हिज ग्रैंडफादर, कनिंग नेचर ऑफ हिज ग्रैंडफादर, ही बिगिन टू हेट हिम. So, the narrator used to go out with his grandfather when he was a small child. In first para, he said, I must have been very young at that time. मैं उस टाइम बहुत छोटा था, मुझे अच्छी तरह से याद नहीं है, लेकिन मुझे एक चीज याद है कि जब मेरे दादाजी लोग मुझे देखते थे, whenever people saw me with my grandfather, they would love me, they would pat me on my head and give my cheek a pinch. वो मेरे साथ वो हरकतें किया करते थे, the things they did not do to my grandfather. He never used to go out with his grandfather. In the morning, he would go to the mosque alone to learn the Quran. The strange thing was that I never used to go out with my grandfather. वो इतना आदी हो चुका था, हैबिचुअल हो चुका था अपने दादाजी का कि वो अपने दादा के बगैर कहीं बाहर नहीं जाते थे. अपने पापा के बारे में उसको पता ही नहीं कि पापा कब आते हैं जाते हैं. But he was so attached with his grandfather that he never ventured with his grandfather, but he always remained, I can say, attached with his grandfather. In the morning, he would go to mosque alone to learn the Quran. He loved doing things that, but most He loved doing that, but most of the children of his age grumbled at that. वो काम करता था जो उसकी उम्र के बच्चे, उनको हेजिटेशन होती थी, वो नहीं करते थे. सुबह जल्दी जागना, फिर मस्जिद जाना, मौलवी साहब के पास कुरान शरीफ सीखने के लिए या नमाज पढ़ना, वो कुछ हटके से जो एक्शंस किया करता था जो बाकी बच्चों में वो आदतें मौजूद नहीं थी. The narrator was quick at learning the Quran by heart. The narrator says that he was so quick, he was so intelligent. The Sheikh, the Maulvi Sahib, always asked him to stand up. Among all the students, only he was asked by the Maulvi Sahib, by the Sheikh, to stand and recite the chapter of Quran, Holy Quran, few verses of Holy Quran, whenever they have visitors. The visitors would be pleased with the narrator and then they would pat him on his head and cheek. The narrator, the little boy, loved the mosque and he also loved the river. He enjoyed to learn the Quran. After finishing his breakfast, he ran off for a swim in the river. नाश्ता खत्म करके ही वो जल्दी से नहाने के लिए जाता था दरिया में. After he got tired of swimming, जब वो थक जाता था नहाते नहाते, he sat on the bank of the river. वो दरिया के किनारे बैठता था, enjoy किया करता था. After he got tired of swimming, the narrator loved to see his imagination, just like a tribe of giants living behind the thick wood of acacia trees. Acacia trees means जिनको हम कश्मीरी में किकर के पेड़ बोलते हैं. He imagined the giant as people as tall as thin as his grandfather, like his grandfather. उसको लगता था उन पेड़ों के पीछे बड़े बड़े लोग रहते हैं, just like his grandfather. The beard was white like the beard of his grandfather. The grandfather's nose was sharp. He loved his grandfather dearly. He was so passionate about his grandfather and desired to grow like just his grandfather. He imagined that the narrator, when he was a little boy, without having full understanding of life, without having full experience of life, he imagined that he too would be like his grandfather when he grew tall. He was also the old man's but though he too was his grandfather's favorite child. When his grandfather had nothing as a leisure time, he insisted the little boy to recite some verses of Holy Quran by his own way. One day, the narrator asked his grandfather about their neighbor. Both the young boy, the little one, and his grandfather, they were also remains with each other. So one day, the boy asked his grandfather about their poor neighbor Masood. But the grandfather said that Masood was an indolent, a lazy man, and the grandfather said that he didn't like these lazy persons. Then the grandfather drew the attention of his grandson, the little boy, to the field stretching over an area of 100 fadans. The old man, the grandfather of the narrator, also showed him the date palms, sand, acacia, and sal trees growing over the vast expanse of the field. Then, in a very cool manner, the old man told the little boy, with an air of self-importance, with an air of superiority, with an air of self-esteem that 2/3 of the whole field was belonged to Masood. All those date palms and other trees once belonged to Masood. His grandfather hoped that he would. The narrator's grandfather was so greedy, he was so mean, he was so greedy that he would. He said in a very easy manner that he hoped that he would buy the remaining land from the Masood before his death. But these words moved the writer's feelings. He felt fear as at his grandfather's words and pity for his neighbor Masood. The loved Masood's because the little boy loved Masood's singing, his beautiful voice and powerful laugh. But his grandfather, as I have already told you, he was so greedy, he was so cunning, he was so mean, he was so selfish, he would never laugh at all. Thanks. Have a nice day.